Greetings, my friends. Evangelist Joey Bellmore here for another Signs of the Times report. And in this report, we're going to look at some of the earth changes going on around the world. And as we always do, we're going to start with the earthquakes. Starting with this one, down in the southern Pacific Ocean, there was a magnitude 6.2 earthquake in the Vanuatu Islands area. As the earthquakes in diverse places continue to rattle around the globe, just as Jesus said in Matthew 24. And in this report, we see that a strong earthquake with a preliminary magnitude of 6.0 has struck down in the east of the Ovalle in Chile's Limari province, according to this report from seismologists. And it says the shaking was felt over a large area. And there was a 5.4 earthquake in Uttarakhand, India. According to this report, we see there was a strong 6.0 magnitude earthquake in Indonesia. And as we always do, we'll go have a live look in here at the European Mediterranean Seismological Center, and we'll look at the latest earthquakes around the world. And I'll give the page a refresh here, just to make sure. And so we see... Let's look back here. I've got it set on magnitude 4 or greater, or else there would be a lot more. But I just wanted to filter it down to some of the most significant seismic activity. But we see a lot of activity in certain areas around the globe. I'm not going to mention every one here, but we'll mention all the earthquakes that are 5 or above, I guess, for now. But there was a 5.6 in Java, Indonesia, a 5.8 in Coquimbo, Chile. There you see a 5.2 in the Kermadec Islands region, 5.2 in the Samar, Philippines, a 6.1 in the Kalimantan, Indonesia area, 5.2 in Bougainville region in Papua New Guinea, also a 4.5 in western Iran, which is rather large for that particular area. It's worth mentioning. There's a 5.5 in the New Britain region of Papua New Guinea as the seismic activity continues over there, and you see many of the swarms in that area. Also 4.5 in the Greenland Sea, and a 4.5 in the Banda Sea, and in the Kalimantan, Indonesia area, you see the seismic activity continues over there. So we see the earthquakes around the world just continue, and as I said, if I had it set on, the full list of all magnitudes, there would be far more. But I just wanted to focus on the significant seismic activity as the earthquakes in diverse places continue around the globe. Meanwhile, the sinkhole activity continues in many areas in Oregon and other areas around the globe, for that matter, but specifically in the United States. In this piece here, we see that a 30-foot wide, 25-foot deep sinkhole appeared in the parking lot of the Fireside Grill adjacent to Highway 101 in Harbor, and this is in Oregon. So we see that there's been many reports of sinkholes in that particular area in my last couple of reports. So there seems to be some sort of geological activity happening along the West Coast, as we've seen multiple reports all up and down the west coast of North America as well as South America in my recent reports. And more of the same here in Oregon, as there was a landslide and a sinkhole that damaged homes in Newport. And so what I'll do is I'll play the news coverage here for you really quick, and that way there you can hear the report.
Well, Dan and Eileen, it began last night just after dinner time here when the heavy rain started falling sideways. The hillside on this street here in northeast Newport gave way and destroyed several homes in the process. This is the view from below the homes that washed away, where sideways rainfall last night buckled the hillside onto the homes and took them all out. Tammy Johnson was inside one of those homes giving piano lessons when the ground under the house she was in started sliding away.
We just heard something that sounded like a tree hitting the top of the roof.
This heavy rain saturated the earth, and it just turn the mud and washed away.
Calm returned to the neighborhood today as a steady rain let up. Firefighters at one point went inside at least one of the damaged houses to retrieve belongings. But the simple fact is that many of these people had no time to grab anything but cell phones and purses and run for safety when the hill under their home started sliding.
This is one of the more significant ones that we've had in Newport that I can remember.
The hillside here has changed forever. The houses that remain will forever remember last night as the night the hillside nearly swallowed them all.
And that's pretty scary stuff in Oregon. When the ground starts sliding out underneath your house and you got to make a run for it. Praise God that nobody was injured or harmed in any way, because that could have been very, very dangerous. I mean, it was dangerous, but you know what I mean. And there was also, as we see in this report here that I've got pulled up, we've got huge sinkhole that opened up also in West Houston in Texas. And there's also news footage on this report here, which I'll play as well.
New at 5 now, a massive sinkhole opens up just feet from a West Harris County home, and what's more concerning, it keeps growing. Now the man who owns the house was asking for Channel 2 to help before the hole swallows his entire property. He talked to Ryan Korsgaard today, and Ryan's joining us live now with more of his story. Ryan?
Lauren, we've got a little bit of help. Let me show you right behind me. There's a fence over there. You can see barricades. Well, in the middle of it, there's a hole, and that hole is not very far from a house. This is the sinkhole that grows right outside George McClellan's backyard. He shot this video of the rushing water at the bottom as the hole has grown over the last 30 days.
It's probably grown 300% in the last week and a half.
And that concerns him as the hole now measures about 30 feet across. He says he first called the city and the county. City
sewer line on county property, it's, ping pong. Well, it's not our problem, it's the county's. The county goes, it's not our sewer line. So, I got frustrated, and that's why I called Channel 2 News. I figured somebody might be able to get something done.
Harris County confirms it is a sewer line that is within the city of Houston's easement on the county property on Terry Hershey Park, right near Willcrest. Today, the county put up this cyclone fence to keep people out.
It's primarily a safety and a health issue. I mean, we have an open major sewer line that's been uncovered for a month. It stinks.
The City of Houston's Public Works Department confirms it owns the line. The department says engineers are aware of the problem and are now working on a solution. McClellan says it cannot come soon enough.
I just like to get it fixed. I mean, I got a pool on the other side of that fence, and that's going to be a very expensive fix. If it grows the way it's growing, by Christmas or New Year's, I may have a sinkhole in my backyard.
And the good news is the big equipment is now here. The city telling us it could take a month or more to fix. We're live in West Harris County.
Meanwhile, in Russia, there was a car with a mother and a girl swallowed by an enormous sinkhole, as you see here in this photo. And in the report, it says that, if you read it here, it says, and suddenly the road opened up just under their car. A mother and her girl were swallowed by a giant sinkhole in Russia, and were saved by a passing-by family. And this happened on December the 14th. It says a car transporting a mother and her girl was swallowed by the ground. And there's some of the accounts there. And then you have a security camera that caught footage, as you see here, of the car, head first, if you will, into the sinkhole. That would be a pretty scary scenario. Meanwhile, we see that there were reports of another sinkhole that closed Highway 22 in the Three Rivers Highway, 12 miles east of Hebo, and there were no injuries reported, so that's good. But this was in Dolph, Oregon, and it says Oregon Highway 22, also known as the Three Rivers Highway, or by locals, the Sour Grass, is closed until further notice. Owing to a sinkhole located about 2.5 miles east of the Dolph Junction and roughly 12 miles east of Habo in the U.S. Highway 101 intersection. It says early reports indicate the hole is roughly 5 feet wide and 4 feet deep and affects both lanes. So that's a hazard over there as we see more reports of sinkholes. We also had seen in Arkansas that a sinkhole closed a road and caused traffic detours. As it says here, in Blytheville, drivers are being detoured after a sinkhole was found early Sunday morning at the intersection of 21st and Henley Streets. The road is blocked on 21st Street between Main and Chickasaw, according to a Facebook post from the Blytheville Police Department. And their police are cautioning people not to get close to the sinkhole, obviously. And there was also massive landslides in China that caused buildings to collapse. And we're going to look at some footage of this right here.
Only a few hours since this accident happened, so details are still coming in. There's been a landslide. It happened over quite a wide area. Some reports suggest that perhaps 20 buildings have collapsed in the landslide. It seems it must have been quite slow moving because most people managed to get out of these buildings before the buildings collapsed themselves. But two of them were dormitories for workers. This happened on an industrial site, but two dormitories for workers. So the fear is from the authorities that they don't know if everybody got out, if there were people inside trapped. So hundreds of rescuers have been sent to the scene, and they're going to slowly pick through the rubble. And if you see some of the photographs, the buildings really wedged right in underneath tons and tons of earth there to try and see if there's anybody surviving.
Absolutely, Michael. These pictures look pretty dramatic, don't they? I mean, how could a landslide of this magnitude actually happen?
We don't know yet. It's still early days, but some reports suggest that over the last couple of years there has been a lot of construction work in that particular area, and a lot of earth was piled up against the side of a mountain. We're talking about hundreds and hundreds of tons. It was just put there. Some suggestions are that that's the earth which has now caused this landslide, but the authorities aren't saying anything at the moment about that.
So some pretty devastating stuff there over in China with those landslides, and there's been some updates as I've pulled up here. It says the landslide devastates Chinese industrial park, and there's 91 people missing. It says here at least 91 people were missing after a huge mound of mud and construction waste collapsed at a business park in southern China and buried 33 buildings in the country's latest industrial disaster. It goes on to say the disaster struck the industrial park area in the boom town of Shenzhen City in Guangdong province early on Sunday. And it's saying here that they've ordered an investigation into the incident, which comes 4 months after huge chemical blasts at the northern port of Tianjin killed more than 160 people there. But yeah, it says the mudslide smashed into multi-story buildings at the park, toppling them in collisions that sent rivers of earth skyward. And one gentleman said that the mud came like huge waves as residents ran out of the way. And at one point, the running mud was only 10 meters away from me, according to one of the people's reports. State television, as it says here, showed scenes of devastation with crumpled buildings sticking up from heaps of brown mud which stretched out across the edge of the industrial park. The mud had covered an area of more than 60,000 square meters or 7,200 square yards and was 6 meters deep in parts, state media said. Hundreds of rescuers were sifting through the rubble looking for survivors after the landslide left everything covered in mud, leaving only a surface of yellow sand visible, Xinhua said. And so pretty devastating stuff. There's still 91 people missing, and my thoughts and prayers go out to the families of the individuals that were involved here, and just some pretty devastating stuff. Okay, we'll move on here to some volcanic activity, as it was reported here that the Shivelut volcano has erupted in Russia's far east, spewing ash 5 kilometers high, according to this report here. And we'll take a live look in on the volcanoes around the world, and as I always do, I'll go through the color scheme with you guys. The yellow is where the volcano is experiencing unrest. The orange is where there's a warning of an eruption and minor activity occurring. And the red are the volcanoes that are in full-out eruption. So you can see here all the active volcanoes around the world, and there's many underneath here. If I were to zoom in, you would see many more. But I just want to give you a picture of the global volcanic activity. And anyone who wants to take a look at this site, it's a really cool site that has updates, and you can click on each individual volcano and learn about it just by clicking, and it gives you all the details. So some pretty cool stuff. It's volcanodiscovery.com, and I'll put the link in the description box below with everything else that I've showed you in the video as usual. So we'll move along here. In some weather-related news, we see that there are reports from the Daily Express over in the UK of hailstones the size of cricket balls pounding Sydney, Australia. And it says here, Sydney was hit by a rare tornado on Wednesday. Destructive winds above 200 kilometers an hour hit the area. The Bureau of Meteorology issues a severe storm warning for parts of New South Wales on Wednesday morning, and apparently they experienced huge cricket ball-sized hailstones pummeling from the sky, and it says here, terrifying locals. And they've got some raw footage. Some of those are pretty big. Pretty crazy storm there, so I wanted to share that with you guys. And so it dies down there, and you can see here some people were actually caught.
A freak storm wreaks havoc and destruction on parts of Sydney, Australia, triggering evacuations and causing severe damage to homes. A suburb in Sydney was listed as a disaster zone on Wednesday, December 16th, after a tornado ripped through the area and golf ball-sized hail pelted from the sky. The Bureau of Meteorology said winds measuring up to 132 miles per hour hit the South Sydney suburb of Cornell around 10:30 on Wednesday morning. The Bureau said the winds were the highest ever recorded in the state by their equipment. Forecaster Michael Logan said dangerous winds as strong as those registered on Wednesday create what are called supercell thunderstorms. Ian Krimmer, superintendent of New South Wales Fire and Rescue, called Wednesday's weather, quote, unprecedented. The extreme storm passed late on Wednesday afternoon. Now officials say it's time to focus on cleanup efforts.
And over in Israel, we see that they had a new record set as torrential rains flooded the Ashkelon area. As it says here, schools and roads were engulfed as downpour drowned coastal city with 92 millimeters in a single hour. So that's pretty crazy, and you can see the shots here of a sinkhole that opened up as these waters just washed away the road here. And so more reports of wild weather as the climate chaos continues, and more sinkholes opening up as we see here for multiple different reasons all over the globe, specifically over there in the United States. In other reports, we see here that heavy rain caused flooding in the Benoni area in Johannesburg's East Rand on Thursday, and this is according to a report here from paramedics apparently. And it says numerous collisions were reported, and most of them minor because of the rain and flooding. It says that no injuries were reported, so praise God for that. Meanwhile, over in Europe, they're paving over paradise, as this article talks about, and pretty disturbing news, as you see here, Europe's most biodiverse lake to be drained for luxury apartments. It says here they call it Europe's Galapagos. Lake Ohrid in Macedonia is the most biodiverse lake of its size in the world, home to more than 350 species found nowhere else, enlisted as a UNESCO World Heritage Site based on its natural value. It is also Europe's oldest lake, having survived for thousands and thousands of years, as they say here. I think the correct term there would be thousands, but it goes on to say, but none of that may save it. For a tourist boom is coming to Ohrid, the town on its shores. From April, British holidaymakers can take a cheap flight with Wizz Air from Luton to Holiday in Ohrid. Excuse me. To meet their needs, the lake's most critical ecosystem is set to be concreted over to make space for apartments and a marina. Now we're going to move on here, and we're going to have what I call a Hosea 4:3 update, as we'll look at some of the mass animal die-offs around the world, and we'll close with that. But Hosea 4:3 prophesies of this, as it says, "Therefore shall the land mourn, and everyone that dwelleth therein shall languish, with the beasts of the field, and with the fowls of heaven, yea, the fishes of the sea also shall be taken away." And up until now, in 2015 alone, there have been 815 known mass death events in 95 countries or territories. And so we'll report on some of the most recent mass animal deaths, and we'll start with this report out of O'Leary's Lake in Wisconsin, where about 200 water birds were found dead, according to this report. Meanwhile, in Brevard County, Florida, there were thousands of dead fish that washed ashore, and here's a report on that I'll link you guys up with. And this next report comes from Northwest England. Thousands of cattle are apparently feared dead due to flooding. As it says here, more than 2,000 farm animals are now believed to have drowned in this month's floods, which engulfed Northwest England. And it says here, the Fallen Stock Company, which provides a nationwide service for the collection and disposal of dead stock, said it believed 2,000 sheep and 100 cattle had perished in the flood waters. Over in Nakhon Si Tamarak, Thailand, we see that many dead turtles were found washed up along the coast over there, and they also mentioned that there were tar balls being washed up, and there was also a dolphin. According to this next piece, there were over 1,000 water birds found dead at a wildlife area in Kansas. As it says here, the site may have confused folks in central Kansas over the past couple of weeks. Big migratory waterfowl, often majestic-looking snow geese, appearing drunk and swimming in circles or flying erratically before suddenly plunging dead from the sky. Wild officials blame a decades-old disease called avian cholera, which has infected 2 central Kansas wildlife areas and killed hundreds of waterfowl, and the state's worst outbreak since 1998. It says of roughly 1,100 birds that have been found since early this month at the Cheyenne Bottoms Wildlife Area and the nearby Quivira National Wildlife Refuge, the majority died of avian cholera. And in this article, we see that thousands of dead fish suddenly died, and apparently it's a mystery over in a lake in Jakarta, Indonesia. And I'll link you up with this piece as well. I've got it here translated on Google Translate. But we see a mysterious sudden death of thousands of fish, and you can see them all just, it looks like an apocalyptic die-off there as these die-offs continue worldwide. So I'm going to close with that, my friends. But remember, Jesus told us that it was important that we discern the signs of the times. In Matthew 16, he said, you can discern the face of the sky, but you can't discern the signs of the times. And then in Luke 12, verses 54 and 56, he said, you can discern the face of the sky and of the earth, but how is it that you do not discern the times? Can you discern the times, my friend? A lot of the signs that Jesus mentioned in Matthew 24 are coming to pass, and they're intensifying as we get closer and closer towards the coming of the Messiah, which no man knows the time or the hour. But the one thing is certain, my friends, you want to be right with God, as Jesus mentioned the signs in Matthew 24, and a lot of these are evident today and only intensifying. So we need to take heed, and we need to make sure that we've got our lives in order. And if you don't know Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior, I suggest that you make the decision today to start seeking Him with all your heart, and just, having an open mind and an honest skepticism, which often leads to a great faith if you're seeking for the truth with all your heart. The Word of God says in Jeremiah 29:13, I believe it's Jeremiah 29:13, that if you seek Him with all your heart, you will find Him. There is an almighty creator God who is real, who is going to return, who is going to make a new heaven and a new earth. And this decaying earth that we now see will go over a divine renovation, if you will. And the saints of the Most High will inherit the earth, as the scriptures say. And friends, I want you to be one of the few that find it, like Jesus mentions in Matthew 7. He said, few there be that find it. I pray today that you are one of the few. Look at the signs around the world, and it's not something that we have to be afraid of. Jesus said in Matthew 24 that, see that you're not troubled, for all these things must come to pass. And in Luke 21:28, he said, when these things begin to come to pass, then look up and lift up your heads, for your redemption draweth nigh. So, my friends, lift up your heads, for your redemption draweth nigh. Until next time, I'm Evangelist Joey Bellmore signing off. God bless you guys. It's around the world, and I'll give the page a refresh here, just to make sure. And so we see, let's look back here. I've got it set on magnitude 4 or greater, or else there would be a lot more. But I just wanted to filter it down to some of the most significant seismic activity. But we see a lot of activity in certain areas around the globe. I'm not going to mention every one here, but we'll mention all the earthquakes that are 5 or above, I guess, for now. But there was a 5.6 in Java, Indonesia, a 5.8 in Coquimbo, Chile. There you see a 5.2 in the Kermadec Islands region. Greetings, my friends. Evangelist Joey Bellmore here for another Signs of the Times report. And in this report, we're going to look at some of the earth changes going on around the world. And as we always do, we're going to start with the earthquakes. Starting with this one, down in the southern Pacific Ocean, there was a magnitude 6.2 earthquake in the Vanuatu Islands area. As the earthquakes in diverse places continue to rattle around the globe, just as Jesus said in Matthew 24. And on Indonesia area, you see the seismic activity continues over there. So we see the earthquakes around the world just continue. And as I said, if I had it set on the full list of all magnitudes, there would be far more. But I just wanted to focus on the significant seismic activity as the earthquakes in diverse places continue around the globe. Meanwhile, the sinkhole activity continues in many areas in Oregon and other areas around the globe, for that matter, but specifically in the United States. In this piece here, we see that a 30-foot wide region, 5.2 in the Samar, Philippines, a 6.1 in the Kalimantan, Indonesia area, 5.2 in Bougainville region in Papua New Guinea, also a 4.5 in western Iran, which is rather large for that particular area. It's worth mentioning. There's a 5.5 in the New Britain region of Papua New Guinea as the seismic activity continues over there, and you see many of the swarms in that area. Also 4.5 in the Greenland Sea, and a 4.5 in the Banda Sea, and in the Kalimantan. And in this report, we see that a strong earthquake with a preliminary magnitude of 6.0 has struck down in the east of the Ovalle in Chile's Limari province, according to this report from seismologists. And it says the shaking was felt over a large area. And there was a 5.4 earthquake in Uttarakhand, India. According to this report, we see there was a strong 6.0 magnitude earthquake in Indonesia. And as we always do, we'll go have a live look in here at the European Mediterranean Seismological Center, and we'll look at the latest earthquakes